Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Planting Seeds for Success, which is our assessment department open house. My name is Rebecca McAlpine, the Director of Engagement. Thank you for being on our Weeks of Welcome journey with us. I am so excited to have Beth here with us today, who's going to take us on an assessment journey all throughout our Weeks of Welcome session here and you'll learn everything you ever needed to know and more about assessment. So with that being said, Beth, please feel free to take it away. Thank you so much for presenting.
Thank you, Rebecca, and welcome to Planting Seeds for Success. So let's go through our agenda for today. My name is Beth Snade, and I'm the assessment coordinator. And today we're going to be discussing the assessments we administer at Compass and their importance for our school and our scholars. This is our agenda for today. We'll begin with our mission, vision, and our Compass values, and then I will introduce the assessment team. I'll share the acronyms related to each assessment and walk through the schedule for this year. I'll then explain how we cultivate growth through assessments by explaining how we do and don't use the assessment results. I'll go over specifics for each assessment, including estimated assessment times, and wrap up by sharing where you can find practice and training tests for the state assessments and how to locate score reports. I'll be happy to answer your questions at the end of the presentation. So our mission is to inspire and develop innovative, creative, self-directed learners one scholar at a time. Our vision is to create an innovative, collaborative learning environment that supports the diverse needs and goals of each scholar, nurtures a love of learning, and prepares them for future success. Our RTAKE values of achievement, respect, teamwork, integrity, and communication ground us and keep us focused on our scholars. So the assessment team works within the larger staff support team department. I'm Beth Snade. I've been the assessment data coordinator for 11 going on 12 years. My team, which includes an assessment specialist, Carrie, and 2 teachers on special assignment, Erica and Tanya, plan and manage assessments and then disaggregate and visualize the data from those assessments to help teachers and scholars set their goals and ensure support is provided when needed. In education, it's an alphabet soup with all of the acronyms, so I'll walk you through a few of these. SBAC is the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium. The Smarter Balanced Assessment System includes a comprehensive suite of standards-aligned tools and resources. CASP is the California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress. The CASP assessments measure knowledge and skills in English Language Arts, ELA, mathematics, and science, as well as progress towards college and career readiness. Scholars with the most significant cognitive disabilities may be assessed using the California Alternate Assessment, called the CAW, if it has been specified in their IEP plan. The format of the ELA and math assessments are in 2 parts, the CAT, or CAT, Computer Adaptive Test, and the PT, the Performance Task. The California Science Test is known as the CAST. Then we have LPAC, the English Language Proficiency Assessments for California. There are 2 assessments for LPAC, the initial and the summative. And then we have the PFT, which is the physical fitness test for California. So let's look at our assessment schedule for this school year. We attempt to keep assessments from overlapping to prevent assessment stacking towards the end of the year and hopefully to avoid assessment fatigue for our scholars. Our fall STAR window starts the first day of school and continues until September 18th. We then plan for My Savers in October and November. And then our winter STAR window begins December 1st and ends December 18th when we go on winter break. The state LPAC window begins February 1st to May 31st each school year. Our Compass LPAC window will begin March 2nd and continue until May 28th, which is the final Friday in May. And we'll have a second My Savers screening in February along with Amira. CASP begins March 8th until March 26th when we go on spring break. Our fantastic assessment TOSAs will be hosting CASP prep sessions again this school year, and those will begin February 5th to March 5th at noon on Fridays, and we'll use the Zoom registration for scholars to RSVP for that. After spring break, we will have CASP makeups for 3 weeks. And then we'll have 3 PFT dates scheduled this year, and scholar signups will go out in the MMU in late March. And we've shifted that PFT to a little bit later because of El Nino and weather. We don't want to cancel any this year. And then to wrap up the year, we'll have our spring STAR window. This window begins May 10th until May 28th. So assessments have many uses, and each score adds to the picture we're creating of each of our scholars. We can plant the seeds for success by preparing scholars for college and career, achieving our expected participation for each assessment, by placing scholars with the correct courses that will challenge them, by personalizing education paths for our scholars based on their assessments and prior learning, and by providing targeted academic support for all scholars. California's academic standards are designed so scholars can graduate ready for college and career. Assessment data can reveal if we are meeting that goal, both after graduation for reportings and well before graduation, allowing us to make corrections to our processes to better support teaching and learning. 200 plus colleges across the country use Smarter Balance test scores to determine college course placement. Public charter schools, like all California public schools, are federally mandated to assess 95% of their scholars using the CASP and assess 100% of their students learning English by using the LPAC assessments each spring. The state of California expects 100% participation for both assessments. This percentage of participation is important to our ongoing charter authorizations as well as state and federal reporting. Assessment data, both participation and performance, is important in our charter renewals. We need to provide complete data to our authorizing district each year and each time we face renewal. These metrics are tracked annually on the California dashboard for all public schools. Our wonderful counseling team uses a variety of scores to determine high school course placement. Teachers can use results to spot and correct instructional paths that aren't working or identify skills or knowledge they need to focus on more. Teachers may also use the results to recommend curriculum to ensure your scholar is progressing academically. At Compass, we talk about personalized education, balancing the development of the whole child, and helping scholars reach their full potential. This approach comes from knowing your scholar through assessment data as one piece of the plan to succeed. For example, the main data point we use to invite scholars to intervention support is the STAR test, given on an interim basis 3 times a year. Any scholar identified with the benchmark of intervention or urgent intervention on the STAR assessment receives an invitation to attend intervention and tutoring. This additional instructional support can make a difference for many scholars, allowing them to gain additional support and confidence while developing an understanding of grade level standards. This is why it's hugely important that scholars take this test seriously and with fidelity. We use this data as our starting point when it comes to providing academic support. If a test score is not accurate, I recommend testing again for the STAR. Assessments aren't the only measure of scholar achievement. Be assured, Compass teachers and staff are using other metrics such as projects, performance tasks like research papers and presentations, as well as performance in courses to determine scholar achievement and address skill gaps. We understand that successful scholars may not assess well for a variety of reasons, and we look at all of the available data to respond to our scholars' needs. We may also use assessment data to prove outcomes to the state and to our authorizing district. Assessment data is our report card rather than the scholars. This data helps guide the school and teachers and ensure we're not only meeting requirements, but also meeting the individual needs of each scholar. We do not make evaluation decisions based on the state assessments. Assessment results are not used to determine if a scholar advances to the next grade, if a scholar graduates, or if a scholar passes or fails a course. Assessment results are separate from course grades and grade level advancement at the end of each school year. If we share assessment data with the educational partners, we are sharing aggregated data, meaning we don't share private, individual, or identifying information. Aggregated data is typically shared by grade level groups, by program, and by charter. So we've looked at the schedule. I'll now share specifics for each assessment in that order. So we begin our school year with STAR assessments by Renaissance, which will be administered 3 times a year in September, December, and May in live proctored sessions via Zoom. STAR is a computer-based adaptive assessment with assessments in early literacy, reading, and math. Scholars in grades K to 2 will take early literacy to screen for foundational skills. We also have curriculum-based measures, CBMs, which are short 1-minute assessments designed to provide useful information for our teachers and tutors for scholars in K to 2 who are struggling with their foundational skills. Scholars in grades 1 to 12 take reading and math. We have our first and second grade scholars start with early literacy, and if they reach the threshold score, they move on to reading and math. Freckle is an additional Renaissance product. It's a curriculum that uses STAR assessment scores to set a beginning level for reading and math practice activities. Scholars may use Freckle as an optional supplemental instructional resource. Scholars using Freckle are encouraged to schedule 30 to 60 minutes a week to work on their instructional paths in Freckle. Scholars at risk or below grade level are encouraged to attend live tutoring sessions in addition to their asynchronous work in Freckle. We also have social studies and science available in our Freckle subscription to offer additional resources for our scholars. LaLilo is another Renaissance product that is used exclusively by our K-2 scholars who are most at risk, as identified by early literacy and CBM results. In order to close skill gaps and strengthen scholars' foundational skills, LaLilo will be the recommended supplemental curriculum for intervention for our younger scholars. Live instruction is also provided for scholars in grades K to 2 for reading intervention. We want to offer foundational skill support to our youngest scholars so they can be successful readers by grade 3. Supervising teachers will use STAR results along with Freckle and LaLilo progress during parent-teacher conferences and connection meetings to collaborate with parents and plan the best support for their scholars. So we have 2 screeners, MySavers and Amira. MySavers is a Renaissance product in our STAR suite. It's a brief and contextually relevant self-rating of risk for social, emotional, and behavioral needs. The screener consists of 20 items that take approximately 5 to 10 minutes to complete. This screener will be administered in the fall and spring for grades 2 to 12. Our academic support and counseling teams will use the data to check in with and support scholars who have a risk factor. Amira, in compliance with Education Code 53008 and in accordance with our commitment to supporting all scholars, is a reading difficulty screener. Scholars in grades K to 2 will be screened annually. This will occur in February. Amira predicts at-risk scholars with accuracy through neuroscience-based oral tasks designed to detect early signs of dyslexia. Our scholar support team will follow up with scholars who need additional support with skills and learning. Additional information will be shared for these screenings as we approach each of the screening windows. Our next assessment in the schedule is LPAC. These language fluency assessments are administered by our own Compass teachers and staff for emergent multilingual scholars learning English in grades K to 12. The LPAC is aligned with the 2012 California English Language Development Standards. Scholars are assessed in 4 domains: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. The initial LPAC is used to determine if a scholar is an English learner or is fluent and proficient in English. This assessment is given once to incoming scholars who have never been enrolled in a California public school, and their eligibility is based on their home language survey, which declares a primary or home language as a language other than English. The initial LPAC is given throughout the school year as new scholars enroll. The initial LPAC is administered remotely, and scholars are scheduled to join a virtual meeting to take their assessment. LPAC initial score reports are typically emailed within a week of administration, along with the scholar's new designation based on their results. The summative LPAC is given to scholars who have already been classified as English learners based on their initial LPAC results administered at Compass or at their previous school. The summative LPAC measures how well multilingual scholars are progressing with English language development annually, and to measure progress toward English proficiency to help determine if a scholar is ready to be reclassified as fluent and English proficient. The summative LPAC is administered from February 1st to May 31st each school year. Next up is our PFT. Our physical fitness tests consist of multiple activities. The main goal is to help scholars establish lifelong habits of regular physical activity. The PFT has 6 activities that demonstrate a level of fitness that offer a degree of defense against diseases that come from inactivity. The assessment window for the PFT is also February 1st to May 31st. We will host park days to administer the PFT in person at neighborhood parks, as there is not an approved remote administration available for this assessment. Our PFT dates this school year are Tuesday, April 13th, Thursday, April 29th, and Friday, May 14th. Registration for PFT park days will be shared in the MMU in late February or early March. Select park locations may have a community meetup scheduled after the PFT. Additional information will be provided in the MMU as we get closer to these dates. And then the CASP. The CASP, including CAST, the science test, and CAW for ELA and math, are all given at the same time in the spring. These assessments are computer-based and require a laptop or desktop computer or an iPad with an external keyboard, and require that the secure browser is downloaded to the device ahead of time. Personal Chromebooks are not compatible with the secure browser, but our school-managed Chromebooks are. And we offer loaner computers for testing if necessary. If you already know you're going to need a loaner computer for testing, please let your supervising teacher know. We use Compass teaching staff as assessment proctors. This school year, our CASP assessment window begins March 8th, 2027. While the CAW for ELA and math align with the CASP schedule, the CAW science test can begin as early as September. All sections of the CAW, this California Alternate Assessment, must be administered in person, and this is typically scheduled and administered by the educational specialists from our special education department. Score reports for CASP and summative LPAC are typically available 8 to 12 weeks after our testing ends at the end of spring and can be accessed in the parent or scholar portal in School Pathways. If your scholar took the CASP or LPAC last year, even if they did so at another California public school, you should be able to find those score reports in the parent portal once they're actively enrolled, so after the first day of school. And it may not be immediate. Check back in the first week or two of school, and you should be able to see those score reports. Okay, so who participates in all of these assessments? It can be confusing to track if your scholar needs to take an assessment. So using this slide, you can determine which assessments your scholar needs at Compass. Don't have the screeners included on this table. So CASP is taken by scholars in grades 3 through 8 and 11. CAST, the science test, is taken by scholars in grades 5, 8, and once in high school. It's recommended the high school scholars take CAST the year they are finishing their second and final science course. This would typically be grade 10, but it may fall in grade 11 or 12. STAR Early Literacy is taken by scholars grades K to 2. Scholars in grades 3 to 12 may access early literacy if necessary based on their level of need or their IEP. STAR Reading and Math are taken by scholars in grades 1 to 12. For grades 1 to 2, STAR Reading and Math may be recommended based on the scholar's at or above grade level score on the early literacy assessment. LPAC is given to scholars in grades K to 12 as appropriate for scholars identified through their home language survey or scholars previously identified as emergent multilingual scholars. Scholars in TK identified through their home language survey will not be assessed with the LPAC until kindergarten. PFT is taken by scholars in grades 5, 7, and 9. And then not included on the slide, Amira is for scholars in grades K to 2, and My Savers is for scholars in grades 2 to 12. With each of these assessments, we post reminders in the MMU, and your ST will be communicating with you about these assessments. It's recommended that you sign up on Parent Square, set your preferred language and your preferred timing of notifications or email delivery for information. So our estimated assessment times for each assessment given at Compass reflect actual assessment time and does not include time for instructions or logging into the test delivery system. When sharing estimated assessment times, there is no implication that scholars need to finish in a certain amount of time for the state assessments, as those are untimed. The times listed are average estimates, and scholars may finish in less time or take more time than listed. The CASP is typically scheduled to allow scholars to complete each content area on a separate day. STAR does have time limits for each question, which are essential to the norming of the assessments for early literacy, reading, and math. Time limits can be extended based on a scholar's IEP 504 or documented need. Unlimited time in STAR is an accommodation that must be clearly stated in the IEP or 504. The initial LPAC assessment is administered one-on-one with a trained administrator and takes approximately 60 minutes. Scholars may take as much time as needed to complete the assessment and answer each question. The summative LPAC is an annual assessment that can take up to 2 hours, but again, it's untimed and scholars may take the time necessary to complete their assessment. The LPAC contains 4 domains which can be administered separately and on different days as needed for the scholars or administrator's schedule. AMIRA takes approximately 10 to 15 minutes for scholars to complete, and MySavers takes less than 10 minutes to complete. So we have some expectations for testing. So LPAC is a fixed form assessment, meaning scholars in each grade level group receive the same test. The LPAC presents a standardized sequence of questions across listening, speaking, reading, and writing to measure English language proficiency strictly against California ELD standards. The CASP and STAR assessments are computer adaptive assessments that dynamically adjust question difficulty based on a student's live responses. All of these assessments are administered remotely on a computer. For STAR, the dynamic adjustment means questions get harder after correct answers and easier after incorrect ones. The targeted ceiling is the algorithm honing in on an exact boundary of what a student knows and what they're ready to learn next. And this is efficient and yields high statistical precision with a short item count. No studying needed. This measures foundational retention and skill levels rather than rote memorization of specific test content. For the CASP, this dynamic challenge is similar. Questions get harder when a student answers correctly and easier if they answer incorrectly. Using precise measurement, the system hones in on a student's exact achievement level rather than giving a fixed set of static questions. Every student receives a custom and unique sequence of questions tailored to their individual skill level. So what all this means is that if scholars receive help during their testing, very quickly the assessment will become extremely frustrating as the rigor increases with each correct answer. This also gives us performance data that is invalid for the scholar. It doesn't show us a true measure of their academic level. Scholars may be presented with questions that they don't know. This is part of the targeted ceiling and precise measurement that hones in on the scholar's performance level. And it's absolutely okay that scholars don't know the answer to every question on an assessment. They aren't expected to know every answer. The teachers explain this, but scholars need to hear this from everyone, teachers and parents, that it's okay that they don't know every answer. For all assessments at Compass, the ones listed here and AMIRA, MySavers, and others, parents need to step away from their scholars during testing. They can help them log in and be a technology assistant, but then they need to allow their scholars to test independently once the assessment starts. We live proctor tests in Zoom, so scholars can ask their teachers if they have any questions during testing. They should not be asking their parents or siblings for answers. Parents should not be reading assessment questions or answering selections or the answer selections for scholars. Parents can use phrases like, do your best, or try to figure out what the word means by the words around it, or make your best guess, or ask them to say it aloud to themselves and choose the best answer. Parents need to refrain from providing hints, clues, reading the words, providing definitions, or giving the answers to their scholars. This doesn't help them learn, and it doesn't give us valid assessment results. Independent skills can be built during assessments. Scholars can build resilience and understand that they can do difficult tasks by themselves. So we ask that you operate within this framework to allow your scholars to test independently as they build skills for learning. So to prepare for the CASP, CAW, and LPAC, practice and training tests are available on the CASP and LPAC website. These practice tests allow scholars to become familiar with the testing interface and help to expose scholars to the types of questions they should expect during their assessment. Parents can work with their scholars using the practice and training tests. There are no score reports for the practice and training tests. The purpose of the practice and training test is to expose scholars to the types of questions they may encounter on the assessments and to practice using the embedded accommodation and support in the testing interface. Our ELD tutors also use the practice and training tests in their sessions in a formative assessment process to discuss the types of questions, how to approach it, and to teach test-taking strategies. Our assessment TOSAs also host CASP prep sessions via Zoom in the weeks leading up to CASP testing to share strategies and information with scholars. Scholars can register to attend these sessions, and we will share the recordings in the MMU each week. If you're not sure where to begin, the training test is shorter compared to the practice test and includes sample questions for each domain. The practice tests include examples of all the types of questions that may appear in the assessment and mirrors a full-length operational test. The performance task is a multi-question task requiring scholars to link skills and knowledge across standards. Scholars can use any of these to practice using the various universal and accessibility tools that are available within the testing system. They do not need to complete any of the practice and training tests. They have multiple attempts to work through this practice and training tests. Additional resources for parents and scholars can be found at each of the Starting Smarter websites. And score reports. So as shared in the MMU last spring, score reports from last spring's CASP and LPAC assessments are available in the Parent Scholar Portal in School Pathways for scholars who are pre-enrolled or actively enrolled in Compass. So if your scholar attended a different California public school last year, you should be able to view their score reports in the School Pathways portal the first or second week of school once our enrollment records are complete and uploaded. The Starting Smarter sites will have additional resources for information for you about the score reports and what the reports mean. As we wrap up today, we would love to encourage you to continue joining us at our Weeks of Welcome offerings. If you're unable to attend the session live, don't worry. Recordings and presentation slides are regularly added to our WOW library linked in the chat. And let me grab that link for you real quick, put it in the chat. Oh, see, it's already there. Okay. So thank you so much for joining me today for Planting the Seeds of Success. Let me stop the share and we can see if we have any questions.